My name is Jonathan Hayes. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that family can cut you deeper than any stranger ever could. You can work your whole life, break your back to give your children everything they ask for, and still end up abandoned the moment you're no longer convenient to them. And tonight was the night I found out just how cruel my own blood could be. Dad, why don't you get it? You're a burden now. My son Ethan's voice roared through the hospital room like a knife tearing the air. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't gentle. He was angry. My daughter-in-law stood behind him, her arms folded, her lips twisted with disgust, nodding at every hateful word he spit at me. I had just come out of surgery 2 days ago, my body still weak, my chest stitched and raw, and instead of comfort, instead of love, I was being screamed at like I was trash. You ungrateful boy! I shouted back, slamming my fist on the side table, my voice breaking but filled with fire. I sacrificed my life for you. Worked double shifts, skipped meals, walked to work in the rain so you could have a car, a college degree, a future. My voice cracked, but my anger was stronger than the pain tearing through my stitches. And this is how you repay me? Calling me a burden? Ethan's face turned red, and he leaned closer, his finger stabbing at the air like I was nothing more than a nuisance in his way. You think I asked for your sacrifices? You think I begged you to give up your life? That was your choice, old man. Don't throw it in my face like I owe you something. You're sick, you're weak, and you're dragging us down. We don't want to babysit you anymore. The words stung worse than any wound. I looked past him to my daughter-in-law, Melissa, hoping she would step in, hoping she would calm him down, hoping she would remember I once paid her rent when her own parents turned her away. But instead, she rolled her eyes and said coldly, Ethan's right. We're young, we have our lives to live. We can't be tied down taking care of an old man who refuses to accept reality. You should be in a nursing home, not in our house, ruining our marriage. Something inside me snapped. I forced myself upright in the bed despite the pain, my hands shaking, my voice trembling with rage. A nursing home? After everything I've done for you too? After I gave you the down payment for your house? After I let you move into my home when you had nothing? And now you dare to stand here and tell me I'm ruining your marriage? No, you're ruining something far greater, you're ruining your souls. Melissa scoffed, stepping forward, her eyes cold as steel. Don't turn this into some big speech, Jonathan. You're not a hero. You're a stubborn old man who doesn't know when to let go. You think you're the only one who's ever sacrificed. Ethan and I have given up nights, weekends, vacations, all because we had to run around taking care of you. You're selfish. You only think about what you gave us, not what we've lost because of you. I laughed bitterly, the sound dry and broken. Selfish? You call me selfish for wanting to live? For needing help after a surgery that nearly killed me? Selfish is taking from me your entire life and throwing me aside the moment I'm not useful. Selfish is looking at your own father and seeing nothing but a burden. My voice shook as tears welled up, but I refused to let them see me crumble. I may be weak in body, but my spirit is stronger than both of you combined. And one day, you'll regret these words. Ethan sneered, stepping so close I could smell the bitterness of his breath. No, Dad. The only regret I'll have is not cutting ties with you sooner. If you don't want to move into a home, fine. But don't expect us to stay around. You're on your own from tonight. And just like that, he grabbed Melissa's hand, turned his back on me, and stormed toward the door. I shouted after them, my voice echoing down the sterile hallway. Run. Run from your responsibilities, from your conscience, from your father's love. But hear me, the night will come when the truth knocks on your door, and you won't be able to run from it. The door slammed shut, leaving me in a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest more painfully than the surgery ever had. I sat there, shaking, my heart pounding, the monitors beside me beeping louder as if they were mocking me. My own son. My only child. Gone. And not just gone, but gone with hatred, gone with disgust, gone with words that would haunt me until my last breath. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to give up. But something inside me refused. Something told me that this was not the end of my story, it was the beginning. That night, when they left me alone in that hospital room, thinking they had broken me, they had no idea that life had a twist waiting for them. A twist that would turn their smugness into shock, their cruelty into shame, and their pride into regret. Because when people abandon you at your weakest, they think they've won. But sometimes, God uses betrayal as the stage for his biggest revelations. And I promise you, what happened next, what unfolded that very night, was something they never saw coming. So if you're listening right now, let my story be a warning. Don't ever let the people you love the most treat you like less than human. Don't ever allow someone's ingratitude to define your worth. And most of all, don't give up, even when you're left alone. Because the night may be dark, but the truth always finds its way to the light. If you've ever felt abandoned, if you've ever been cast aside by the very people you sacrificed for, then stay with me. This story isn't just about pain, it's about justice, about revelation, and about the night my son and daughter-in-law learned a lesson they'll never forget. I sat there, staring at the hospital door long after it slammed shut, the echo of their footsteps fading into silence. My chest hurt, not just from the fresh stitches across my ribs, but from the words that had been hurled at me like daggers. Burden. Selfish. Ruining our marriage. Words spoken not by strangers, not by enemies, but by the very people who should have been my lifeline. My own son. My own blood. And the woman I had once called a daughter. The beeping of the monitors filled the room with an eerie rhythm, almost like a countdown. For a moment, I thought about what would happen if the machines stopped. Would anyone rush in? Would anyone notice? Or would I just be another forgotten old man lying in a cold hospital bed? I closed my eyes, and in the darkness, I saw memories of Ethan as a child. His little hand clutching mine as he learned to walk, his excited voice when he got his first bike, the nights I stayed up helping him with homework even after a 12-hour shift at the factory. How quickly those memories had been erased in his heart. The nurse peeked in, probably having heard the shouting. She gave me a pitying look, the kind people give when they know there's nothing they can say to ease the pain. "Mr. Hayes," she whispered softly, "try to rest. Stress isn't good for your recovery." Then she quietly closed the door, leaving me alone with the storm inside me. But I couldn't rest. My mind wouldn't let me. I lay there, replaying every word Ethan had shouted. My fists clenched under the thin blanket, my body trembling with a mix of rage and sorrow. I had spent my entire life building him up, protecting him from the hardships I faced. I went hungry so he could eat. I wore torn boots so he could have new sneakers. I skipped doctor visits so his tuition would be paid. And tonight, standing by my bed, he had looked me in the eyes and told me I was nothing but a burden. I whispered into the empty room, my voice cracking. "God, why? Why give me a son if his heart would grow so cold? Why bless me with family only to let them abandon me when I need them most?" The room stayed silent. No answer came. Only the hum of the machines, the dim buzz of the fluorescent light above me. I wanted to believe this was just anger speaking, that Ethan didn't mean it. But deep down, I knew. I saw the truth in his eyes. He and Melissa had already made up their minds. They wanted me gone. Hours passed, but sleep never came. I watched the clock on the wall tick past midnight, then 1, then 2. The hallways grew quieter, the hospital falling into that strange stillness of the night shift. And that was when it happened. That was when the night began to change everything. At first, it was just a sound, a low shuffle outside my door. I thought maybe it was the janitor making rounds. But then, the door handle turned. Slowly. Hesitantly. Like someone was trying not to be heard. My heart raced. I sat up slightly, clutching the blanket, my body stiff with tension. The door creaked open, and a shadow slipped into the room. It wasn't a nurse. It wasn't a doctor. It was Ethan. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, hope flickered inside me. Maybe he had come back. Maybe he regretted his words. Maybe he realized what he had done and wanted to make it right. "Ethan?" I whispered. But the look on his face crushed that hope instantly. He wasn't looking at me with regret. He wasn't looking at me with love. He was looking at the drawer by my bedside, the one where I had kept my wallet, my wedding ring, and the envelope of cash I had withdrawn for bills before my surgery. "Son," my voice trembled, "what are you doing?" Ethan froze, caught in the act, his eyes darting to mine like a thief caught by a stranger. For a long second, the room was silent except for the beeping monitor. Then his jaw clenched. "You weren't supposed to be awake," he muttered. My chest tightened, not from the stitches this time, but from the crushing weight of realization. He hadn't come back for me. He hadn't come back out of love. He had come back to take what little I had left. After everything, my voice cracked as tears welled in my eyes. "You came here to rob me?" Ethan's face twisted with anger, but there was guilt behind his eyes. "You don't understand, Dad. Melissa and I, we're drowning. Bills, debt, everything. You don't need this money. You're lying in a hospital bed while we're out there struggling. You should want to help us." "Help?" I shouted, my voice echoing against the sterile walls. "Help? I already gave you everything. My money, my house, my years. And now you sneak in like a thief in the night to take what little I still have left? That's not help, Ethan, that's betrayal." His face hardened, his voice sharp. "Call it whatever you want. But I'm taking it." He yanked the drawer open, snatching the envelope. My heart felt like it shattered into pieces right there. I tried to get out of bed, but the pain ripped through me, forcing me back down. "Ethan! Don't you dare walk out of here with that. That money is my life, it's my survival while I recover." But he didn't care. He turned his back on me again, just like earlier, only this time he wasn't leaving with harsh words. He was leaving with my future in his hands. And that was the moment I swore to myself, this wasn't going to be the end of my story. No. This was the beginning. My son thought he had buried me under weakness, under age, under sickness. But what he didn't know was that sometimes a man's lowest point becomes the fire that awakens something unstoppable. Because that night, the night my son tried to rob me, something else happened. Something that neither he nor Melissa could have ever predicted. Something that would flip their world upside down and make them regret every cruel word, every selfish action, every betrayal. And that's where the Betrayal story begins. The sound of the door slamming after Ethan stole my money still echoed in my chest long after he left. My body trembled, not just from the pain in my stitches, but from a fire that burned hotter than anything I'd felt in years. I had been robbed, not by a stranger, not by a thief in the night, but by my own flesh and blood. My only son had looked me in the eyes and taken the last of what I had. And the cruelest part? He felt justified. In his heart, I was already dead weight. But fate has a strange way of turning moments of cruelty into lessons. And that night, when I thought I had been left with nothing, something happened that no one in this family could have seen coming. It started with a sound, the sudden blare of alarms in the hallway. At first, I thought it was just another patient flatlining, a tragedy that happens often in hospitals. But then the lights flickered, and the emergency power hummed on. The nurse rushed past my door, panic etched across her face. "Stay in your rooms. "Lock the doors," she shouted. My heart stopped. I struggled up, wincing at the sharp sting in my chest. "What's happening?" I called out, but she was already gone. The hallway filled with running footsteps, voices shouting orders, the crackle of radios. And then I heard it, something that froze me in place. Melissa's voice. She was outside, screaming. I dragged myself to the edge of the bed, forcing my weak legs to the floor. Every step felt like a knife in my ribs, but I pushed through the pain until I reached the door. I cracked it open just enough to see down the corridor. And what I saw made my blood run cold. Ethan and Melissa were cornered at the far end of the hall. A man in a dark hoodie was blocking their path, his voice low, threatening, his hands stuffed in his pocket like he was holding something dangerous. Melissa clung to Ethan, her face pale with terror. Ethan tried to look tough, but his hands shook. "Please," he begged the man. "We don't want any trouble." For a moment, I thought it was just a mugger. But then the hooded man's eyes darted toward the envelope in Ethan's hand, the same envelope he had just stolen from me. And in that instant, it all made sense. My son's greed had drawn danger to him. The man must have followed him from my room, or maybe he had seen Ethan flashing the cash. Whatever the case, my son had walked straight into a nightmare of his own making. "Hand it over," the man growled, his voice like gravel. "All of it. Now." Melissa shrieked, clutching Ethan tighter. Ethan's face went white. He looked at the envelope, then at Melissa, then at the man. And in that split second, I saw it, the same selfishness that had led him to betray me. Without hesitation, Ethan shoved Melissa toward the stranger and bolted down the hall, clutching the envelope. Melissa fell to the ground, screaming his name, but Ethan didn't look back. He didn't even slow down. He left his own wife as a shield while he ran with the money. My heart ached, but not with pity. No, it ached with a terrible kind of truth. Ethan wasn't just a bad son, he was a coward. And now Melissa was paying the price for the monster he had become. The man yanked Melissa to her feet, snarling. "Your man just left you. Looks like he values money more than your life. Now give me whatever else you've got." Melissa sobbed, her eyes wide with terror. And in that moment, despite everything she had said to me earlier, despite the cruelty she had shown, I couldn't just stand by and watch. Something inside me, maybe the last fragment of the father I had always tried to be, pushed me forward. I stumbled out of my room, leaning heavily on the wall, my voice hoarse but loud enough to cut through the chaos. "Leave her alone," I shouted. The man spun around, startled. His eyes widened when he saw me, an old man in a hospital gown, barely standing. He laughed. "And what are you gonna do, Grandpa? Bleed on me?" I forced myself to take another step, the pain searing through my chest, but I didn't stop. "You want money? You want the envelope? Take it. But don't touch her. Don't drag her into this." Melissa's tear-streaked face turned toward me, her eyes wide with shock. For the first time that night, she didn't look at me with disgust or contempt. She looked at me with something else, something closer to shame. The man sneered, yanking Melissa closer. "You don't make the rules here, old man." But before he could say another word, the sound of heavy boots thundered down the hall. Security guards rounded the corner, flashlights cutting through the dim emergency lights. The man cursed, shoving Melissa aside and sprinting down the opposite hallway. The guards chased after him, their radios crackling, their voices shouting for backup. Melissa collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I staggered toward her, my body trembling, every muscle screaming in pain. "Are you hurt?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. And then, for the first time since she married my son, she reached for me. Her hands clutched mine, desperate, trembling. Why did you step in? After everything I said to you, after how we treated you, why would you risk yourself for me? I looked at her, my own tears blurring my vision. Because that's what family is supposed to do. Even when they don't deserve it. She broke down, sobbing harder, her face buried in her hands. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted. Maybe not in Ethan, no, he was too far gone. But in Melissa, there was a crack in the armor, a moment of realization that couldn't be erased. She had seen the truth. The man she had chosen over me would abandon her in a heartbeat, while the man she had discarded would risk his life to protect her. But the night wasn't over yet. Because as the security team returned, escorting Melissa and me back to my room, Ethan came stumbling back into the hallway. His face was pale, his shirt torn, his hands shaking. He no longer had the envelope. Somewhere in the chaos, he had lost it. All that greed, all that betrayal, all that running, and in the end, he was left with nothing. When his eyes met mine, he froze. For the first time, I saw fear. Not the fear of a man chased by danger, but the fear of a son realizing the truth about himself. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. And I said nothing either. Because in that silence, everything was already clear. That was the night everything changed. The night my son and daughter-in-law faced the mirror of their choices. The night they learned that greed leaves you empty, cowardice leaves you alone, and love, real love, sometimes comes from the very person you cast aside. And as I lay back in my hospital bed, exhausted, broken, but alive, I made a vow to myself. This was not the end of my fight. This was only the beginning. Ethan thought he could abandon me. Melissa thought I was nothing but a burden. But after what happened that night, the truth had already started to unravel. And soon, they would learn a lesson so powerful it would haunt them forever. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds of my hospital room, but it didn't feel warm. My chest still ached from surgery, my legs trembled if I tried to stand, and my mind replayed the events of the night over and over. The sound of Ethan running, the sight of Melissa left behind, the envelope of money slipping away into the hands of fate. It was as if God himself had shown me a clear picture of who my son truly was, not the boy I had raised, but the man he had chosen to become. Melissa sat in the chair by my bed, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. For the first time since she had entered my life, she looked smaller, fragile, stripped of the sharpness that once made her words cut so deep. She had hardly said a word since the security guards escorted us back to my room. She just sat there, quiet, watching me breathe, almost as if she were afraid I might not wake up again. Finally, her voice broke the silence. "Jonathan," she whispered, her tone trembling. "I need to say something. I owe you an apology." I turned my head slowly, meeting her eyes. They were full of shame, but also of something else, sincerity. "Why now?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Because you saw Ethan for what he really is? Or because you saw me for what I still am?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Both," she admitted. "I've been so blind. I thought Ethan was strong, that he was the one holding everything together. But last night," she shook her head. "He left me. He left me without hesitation. And you could barely stand, but you stepped in. You risked yourself for me when I didn't deserve it. I've been cruel, I've been ungrateful, and I've treated you like a burden. But the truth is, you're the only one who acted like family when it mattered most." Her words pierced me, but I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, letting the weight of it sink in. I wanted to believe her, but part of me still burned with anger, not just at Ethan, but at her too. She had stood beside him in his cruelty, nodding at every insult, feeding the fire that nearly consumed me. And yet, here she was, broken, realizing the truth too late. "You see now," I said finally, my voice steady. "Family isn't proven when times are easy. It's proven in the fire, when sacrifice is required. Ethan failed that test last night. And maybe you've started to see the difference. Melissa nodded, her hands clutching each other tightly. I don't know if I can ever undo the hurt I caused you. But I want to try. Please, Jonathan. Let me make this right. Before I could answer, the door swung open. Ethan walked in, his head low, his shoulders hunched, his face pale. He looked nothing like the arrogant young man who had screamed at me the night before. His eyes darted toward Melissa, then to me, but he couldn't hold my gaze. He stood there in silence for a moment before speaking. Dad, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I messed up. I let out a bitter laugh. Messed up? Ethan, you didn't just mess up. You abandoned me. You robbed me. You left your wife in danger to save your own skin. That isn't a mistake, that's a revelation of who you really are. He winced, his lips trembling. I was scared. I wasn't thinking straight. The guy almost had a weapon. I panicked. Melissa shot up from her chair, her voice sharp for the first time since the incident. Panicked? Ethan, you didn't just panic. You threw me to the wolves. You pushed me toward him so you could save yourself. Don't you dare call that panic, call it what it is, cowardice. Ethan's face turned red, and he tried to defend himself, but the words caught in his throat. He looked at her, then at me, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Please, don't give up on me. I shook my head slowly. It's not me you need to convince, Ethan. It's yourself. You've been living like the world owes you everything, taking from everyone around you. And when the moment came to give instead of take, you showed the truth. Last night wasn't just about fear. It was about character. And son, character doesn't lie. The room fell silent. Ethan's chest rose and fell quickly, his fists clenching at his sides. I could see the battle inside him, pride fighting shame, ego fighting guilt. But he said nothing more. He just turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Melissa sank back into her chair, tears streaming again. Jonathan, she whispered, I don't think he'll ever change. But I will. I swear I will. I studied her face. For the first time, I believed her. That was the moment I made a decision. If Ethan couldn't see the truth, then I would show it to him. Not through shouting, not through lectures, but through action. If he thought I was weak, I would rise stronger than ever. If he thought I was a burden, I would become the very man who held the power he thought he owned. So I began to plan. Every free moment, as I lay in that hospital bed recovering, I thought about what I still had left. Not money, that was gone. Not strength, that would take time. But something deeper. My name. My reputation. My story. And the truth that, even when broken, a man who has lived with honor carries a weight that no thief or coward can take away. Melissa stayed by my side through the recovery, quietly helping, quietly watching. She never left early, never rolled her eyes, never muttered complaints the way she once had. And slowly, I saw the change in her. She cooked meals when I came home. She cleaned without being asked. She even began apologizing for things long past. It was as if she realized, finally, what real family was supposed to mean. But Ethan, he stayed distant. He avoided me, avoided even looking me in the eye. He acted like nothing had happened, but the silence between us spoke louder than any apology. And I'll tell you this. Silence has a way of revealing more than words ever could. Because while he ignored me, while he hid from his guilt, I began preparing something he couldn't ignore. Something that would force him to face the man he had become. Something that would shock him so deeply, it would tear down the walls of pride he had built around himself. Because if my son thought abandoning me after surgery was the end of my story, he was wrong. It was only the beginning. By the time I left the hospital, weeks had passed. My body was still weak, but my spirit was sharper than ever. Each step I took was a reminder that I had survived, not just the surgery, but the betrayal of my own son. And survival, I realized, was its own form of power. Ethan thought I was finished, washed up, nothing but a burden. But he had no idea that life was about to show him a truth he couldn't escape. Melissa drove me home that day. Ethan was supposed to come, but he made some excuse about work, about being busy. I could see through it. He was hiding. He couldn't stand to be around me because every time he looked at me, he saw his own reflection, and he hated what it showed. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something immediately. The lawn was overgrown, the gutters sagged, the paint on the porch was peeling. My house, the home I had built, the home I had handed over to Ethan and Melissa when they said they needed a place to start, looked abandoned. It was the same house I had worked 2 decades of overtime to buy, the same house where Ethan had taken his first steps. And now, it stood as a reflection of my son's neglect. Melissa caught my expression and lowered her head. I tried, she whispered. But Ethan, he doesn't care about keeping it up. I clenched my jaw. Doesn't care? This house was supposed to be your future. And he treats it like trash? Melissa said nothing. But her silence told me everything. That night, as I lay in my old bedroom, the one Ethan had promised I would never need again because he and Melissa would take care of me, I made a choice. If my son couldn't respect what I built, then I would take it back. Piece by piece, decision by decision, I would remind him that the foundation he stood on came from me. And when I pulled that foundation out from under him, he would have nothing left to stand on. The first step came quietly. I had never transferred the house deed fully to Ethan. Legally, the home was still in my name. I had allowed him and Melissa to live there, trusting them to treat it as their own. But trust, I now understood, had been misplaced. The next morning, I went down to the county office. Melissa drove me again. Ethan claimed he was too busy, and together we sat in that cold government building. With one signature, I revoked their tenancy. The house was mine again, fully, officially. When I told Melissa what I had done, she didn't argue. She just looked down and whispered, "Maybe that's for the best." The second step came soon after. Ethan had been using my accounts, my credit cards, even my retirement savings, under the guise of helping manage expenses. I went to the bank, set up protections, froze access, and reclaimed every penny that still remained. By the end of the week, Ethan's easy stream of money dried up. The third step was the hardest, but also the most important. I confronted him. He came home late one night, swaggering into the kitchen like nothing had happened. But when he saw me sitting there at the table, waiting, his face fell. "Dad," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Didn't know you'd still be up." I leaned forward, my hands clasped, my voice steady. "Sit down." He hesitated, then dropped into the chair across from me. For a moment, we sat in silence, the air heavy with tension. Finally, I spoke. "Ethan, do you know what happens when a man builds his life on lies and greed?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" I leaned closer, my eyes locked on his. "It crumbles. Because you can't build a future on someone else's sacrifice without ever making one of your own. You've been living off me your whole life, my money, my house, my work. And when I needed you, you abandoned me. You stole from me. You left your own wife in danger to save yourself. That isn't a man. That's a parasite." Ethan's face flushed red. "You think you're perfect? You think you never made mistakes? You were never there for me the way I wanted. You gave me things, sure, but you never gave me freedom. You held your sacrifices over my head like chains. I was suffocating, Dad. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing like thunder. Suffocating? Ethan, I bled for you. I broke my back to give you a life I never had. And you call that suffocating? No, son, what suffocates you is your own selfishness. You'll never be satisfied, because you'll never learn to give, only to take. Melissa, who had been standing in the doorway listening, finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but it carried strength I hadn't heard before. He's right, Ethan. Last night proved it. You left me. You left him. You left everything that matters. And I don't even know if I can call you my husband anymore. Ethan turned to her, his face twisting in panic. Melissa, don't say that. But she cut him off, tears in her eyes. I've seen enough. Jonathan, broken and weak, risked himself for me. You, healthy and strong, pushed me toward danger to save yourself. I married you thinking you were a man. But I was wrong. Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came. He just sat there, his face pale, his fists clenched, his world crumbling. I stood slowly, my legs steady for the first time in weeks. Listen to me, Ethan. I've taken back the house. I've taken back the accounts. Everything you've been leeching off is gone. From this day forward, you stand on your own 2 feet. No more excuses. No more handouts. If you want to be a man, you earn it. If not, you lose everything. Consider this your final lesson. He stared at me, his eyes wide, his breath shallow. You can't, you wouldn't. I already did, I said coldly. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. Melissa turned away, tears streaming. Ethan sat frozen, realizing his kingdom of comfort had collapsed in a single night. And me? For the first time in years, I felt alive. Not because I had destroyed him, but because I had finally taken back what was mine. But deep down, I knew this was not the end. The final reckoning was still to come. Because Ethan could either learn from this lesson, or let it destroy him. And that choice, I realized, would define the rest of his life. Days turned into weeks after I took back the house, the accounts, and the power. Ethan tried to keep up his old swagger, but it was only a mask. His pride was a crumbling wall, one push away from collapse. Melissa kept her distance from him. She spent more and more time with me, helping me with recovery, helping around the house. Sometimes I caught her staring out the window, her eyes distant, her fingers clutching her wedding ring as though she didn't know if it belonged there anymore. One night, after dinner, Melissa finally confessed. Jonathan, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I've tried to hold this marriage together, but Ethan isn't the man I thought he was. And after what he did to you, to both of us, I can't even look at him without feeling sick. I placed my hand over hers. Melissa, you don't have to stay out of guilt. You've already shown me more loyalty than my own blood ever has. Whatever you decide, just know I'll support you. She nodded, tears running down her cheeks. You've been more of a husband than he has. Those words cut deeper than she realized. Not because of what they meant for her marriage, but because of what they revealed about my son. He had already lost her heart, and he was too blind to see it. The breaking point came the following weekend. Ethan stormed into the house, reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He slammed the door so hard the walls rattled. You think you can take everything from me? He shouted, his voice thick with rage. The house, the money, my wife? You think you're the hero here, Dad? You're nothing without me. Nothing. I stood from my chair, my voice calm but firm. No, Ethan. I was everything before you. And I'll still be everything long after you're gone. The only one who's nothing, is the man who betrayed his own father. Melissa rushed into the room. Ethan, stop. Listen to yourself. But he wouldn't. He pointed a shaking finger at her. And you? Don't think I don't see what's happening. You've already replaced me with him, haven't you? You're pathetic. Melissa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Replaced you? Ethan, I stayed with you even when you abandoned me in a burning house. Do you know why? Because I thought maybe there was still a shred of good in you. But tonight, you proved me wrong. Her voice cracked on those last words, but her resolve was unshakable. She pulled off her wedding ring and set it on the table. I'm done. The look on Ethan's face was one I'll never forget, shock, rage, disbelief all colliding into a twisted mask. Melissa, don't you dare. But she was already walking out the door, her suitcase waiting by the steps. She didn't even look back. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan turned to me, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. This is your fault, he hissed. You turned her against me. You took everything from me. You've ruined my life. I stepped closer, my voice low, steady, sharp as a blade. No, Ethan. You ruined your own life. I gave you everything. I gave you a home, money, love, sacrifice. And what did you give me in return? Betrayal. Disrespect. Abandonment. That's not on me. That's on you. He shook his head violently, like a child refusing to hear the truth. But I didn't stop. You want to blame me because it's easier than facing yourself. But the truth is simple, I didn't steal your wife. You pushed her away. I didn't take your money. You wasted it. I didn't ruin your life. You did. My voice grew stronger, louder, until it filled the room. And maybe one day, when you're all alone, you'll realize what I've been trying to teach you your whole life, that a man isn't measured by what he takes, but by what he gives. And you, Ethan, have given nothing. For the first time, he broke. His shoulders slumped, his face crumpled, and tears streamed down his cheeks. He fell to his knees, sobbing, his voice hoarse. I don't know how to be better. I don't know how to fix this. I stood over him, my heart heavy. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to lift him up, to remind him that he was still my son. But another part of me knew this was his moment of reckoning. If I picked him up now, he would never learn to stand on his own. So instead, I spoke the only words he needed to hear. Then start by apologizing. To Melissa. To me. To yourself. And if you can't do that, then you've already lost. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears, his hands trembling. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he whispered, I'm sorry, Dad. The words were broken, fragile, but they were real. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, my son, broken and lost, but maybe, just maybe, finally beginning to see the truth. Melissa didn't come back that night. She didn't come back the next day, either. And I didn't chase her. She deserved peace, and maybe one day, she'd find it. As for Ethan, he stayed. But not as the spoiled, arrogant boy he once was. He stayed as a man stripped of everything, forced to rebuild from the ashes. And whether he rose or fell would be entirely his choice. For me, the lesson was clear. Life doesn't measure us by the money we leave behind, or the comfort we cling to. It measures us by the sacrifices we make, the love we give, and the legacy we leave in the hearts of others. Ethan thought he could take shortcuts. He thought betrayal and greed would build his future. But in the end, he learned what I had always known. You can steal money. You can steal houses. But you can't steal respect. You can't steal love. And without those, you have nothing. A son who betrays his father loses more than money, he loses himself. Because in life, it's not what you take that makes you rich, it's what you give.